Let us discuss the next question. This is from 2018. If the President of India exercises his power as provided under the Article 356 of the Constitution with respect to a particular state, then what will happen? What are the implications? Statement A, the assembly of the state is automatically dissolved. Statement B, the powers of the legislature of that state shall be exercisable by or under the authority of the parliament. Statement C, Article 19 is suspended in that state. Statement D, the president can make laws relating to that state. So here the approach should be that first you need to know what is in Article 356. Article 356 talks about the President rule. And the question is asking about the implication of the President rule. So what happens if the President rule is imposed in a particular state? Statement 1 says the assembly of a state is automatically dissolved. No, the president has the power to dissolve or not to dissolve. So it is not automatically dissolved. Hence it is incorrect. The powers of the legislature of that state shall be exercisable by or under the authority of the parliament. This statement is correct. Statement C, Article 19 is suspended in that state. Here you need to remember, Article 19 is not suspended when the president rule is imposed in a state. Article 19 is suspended in case of a national emergency. Here we are talking about the president's rule. So this is also incorrect. Statement D, the president can make laws relating to that state. This is incorrect because the parliament has the authority to legislate on the state list in that case. So the correct answer is B. Now let us look at the in-depth explanation. The president rule is also known as the state emergency or the constitutional emergency. The reason being, in the Article 356, the provisions say that the president has the authority to declare in a particular state the state emergency or the constitutional emergency, also known as the president rule, if the state is not functioning according to the provisions of the constitution. Either the president can suo motu do it, or he can base it on the report sent by the governor of that particular state. Now, because the violation of the provisions of the constitution are happening in that state, and the president is satisfied that the governance is not happening according to the provisions of the constitution, hence he will declare the president rule. That is why the name constitutional emergency. Also in Article 365, if a particular state fails to comply with the directions given by the center, then also the president can impose a president rule in that particular state. These are the grounds for declaring the president rule. On what basis can you declare the president rule in a state? Now the question is asking about the implications after declaring. What happens after you declare the president rule in a particular state? The implications are the president can take up the functions of that particular state government and the powers which are vested in the governor or any other executive authority. He can take necessary steps, including the suspending of the constitutional provisions relating to anybody or any authority in that particular state. He can declare the power of the state legislature are to be exercised by the parliament. He can dismiss the council of ministers headed by the chief minister, and the parliament passes the state bills and the budget. So here you can see he can give the power of the state legislature to the parliament. He can dismiss the council of ministers and the chief minister, and the power to legislate passes on to the parliament. Also the state administration, which is carried on by the government with the help of the chief secretary on the behalf of the president. So one of the points mentioned about the president will directly administer. No, it will be carried on by the governor with the help of the chief secretary, but ultimately on behalf of the president. The president can also suspend or dissolve the state legislative assembly. The president has the choice here. The statement in the question said it will automatically get dissolved. No, it doesn't automatically get dissolved. The president can either suspend or dissolve the state legislative assembly. And also the powers, the position, the status and functions of the state high courts, they remain the same during the president's rule. And like I already said, Article 19 is suspended during the national emergency. It is not suspended during the president's rule. Coming back to the question, B is the correct answer. Let us discuss the next question. This is from the year 2017. Which of the following are not necessarily the consequences of the proclamation of president rule in the state. So the question is asking about the implications which will not necessarily happen if the president rule is proclaimed in a particular state. Statement 1, dissolution of the state legislative assembly. Statement 2, removal of the council of ministers in the state. Statement 3, dissolution of the local bodies. Select the correct answers using the code given below. Now it is about the implications of the president's rule. What will necessarily happen if the president's rule is imposed in a particular state? Will the state legislative assembly be dissolved? Will it automatically be dissolved? No. The president has the choice to dissolve or suspend it. It doesn't automatically lead to the dissolution of the state legislative assembly. So this is not a necessary consequence. Removal of the council of ministers in the state. When the president rule is imposed, the council of ministers headed by the chief minister, they will be removed. So this is not necessarily a consequence. This is an actual consequence because the removal of the chief minister and the council of ministers will happen. And dissolution of the local bodies. Again, the local bodies don't automatically get dissolved if a president rule is imposed in a particular state. Again, this is not necessarily a consequence. So this will be a necessary consequence. This is a not necessarily consequence. Again, this will be a not necessary consequence because as soon as the president rule is imposed, he will remove the council of ministers headed by the chief ministers. But because the president has a choice to dissolve or not to dissolve the state legislative assembly, it is not a necessary consequences. So because the statement is asking of us which are the not necessarily the consequences, it will be 1 and 3. So answer will be B, 1 and 3. Now let us look at the in-depth provisions about president rule. The president rule related provisions are mentioned in Article 356 of the Constitution. And even before that, in the Article 355, it is the duty of the center to protect every state against 1. External aggression, and 2. Internal disturbances, and to ensure that the government of every state is carried on in accordance with the provisions of the Constitution. And Article 356 clearly says that the president has the power to proclaim in a particular state, with or without the governor's report, the president's rule if he thinks that the governance of that particular state is not happening as per the provisions of the Constitution. That is why the other name for president's rule is also constitutional emergency, state emergency. And Article 365 has a provision where if a particular state fails to comply with the directions given from the center, then also the president can impose the president's rule. So what will necessarily happen if the president rule is imposed? Then the president will dismiss the council of ministers headed by the chief minister. And the dissolution of the state legislative assembly is not a necessary consequence. The president has a choice with regarding to it. And the president's rule imposition doesn't have any impact directly on the governance of the local bodies. Hence, this is not a necessary consequences. So our answer is B, 1 and 3 only.